Today will be a day to remember for the rest of your life. The Pro Football Hall of Fame is excited to present the heart of a Hall of Famer program connected by Extreme Networks. With over 100 Hall of Famers participating, we have reached 47 states and countries all over the world, sharing the message that football is more than a game and can teach Americans important life values like commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and honesty.
You have to make right decisions even when nobody's watching you.
Well, respect is not just given out. It's not handed out like a brochure. It's earned.
Today, you are presented with an opportunity to meet and learn from one of the greatest football players of all time. But more important than that, the chance to see that their Hall of Fame life wasn't given to them. They didn't roll out the bed great. They put the work in, on the field, in the weight room, in the classroom, in their communities. They made themselves a Hall of Famer on and off the field.
Your feet can't take you where your mind's never been.
Because you can make it, but it's just gonna take a little hard work and some effort and the drive and determination.
And today, you will learn you can do the same thing they did. You don't have to have a gold jacket or a bronze bust to make a difference in the lives of others. It's your decision whether you want to be a successful student, son, daughter, brother, or sister.
If attitudes are contagious, is your attitude worth catching?
It's integrity as well, because when you decide to pursue something and you don't quit, that says a lot about you.
Commitment to excellence. We can all aspire to be the best.
Welcome to a once-in-a-lifetime program, the heart of a Hall of Famer program, connected by Extreme Networks.
To tell you how talented our teams were, most weeks our practices were tougher and more demanding than any game we play on Saturday. I still say the 1980 team could have beat Georgia at 1 o'clock, Notre Dame at 4 o'clock, and been national champs if we were only given the chance. And I have some friends over there, Ricky Jackson, Hugh Green, Jimbo Covert, they'll all attest to that.
Most important of all, it's a guy by the name of Jimbo Covert that I had to line up and practice against day in and day out. Let me tell you, he made game easy for me, because I knew I wasn't going to face a guy like him in the game. But being Jimbo, you know, we definitely pushed each other, make each other the best. And, you know, Walter was great for a long time, but that 83 class came in, hey, he led rushing for quite some time. Jimbo, I look forward to see you on the stage. Thank you, Jim. I love you, brother. Thank you.
When I first got to the Bears in 1983, we weren't a very good football team. One of my first meetings, Mike Ditka said, I got good news and bad news. Good news is we're going to the Super Bowl. Bad news is half you guys won't be there when we do. But he pushed us hard, but I also believe he reestablished the pride back into the Bears organization. That playing in the NFL is a privilege and not a right. And that when you pull that Bears jersey over your pads and put on that helmet with that C on the side, it means something special. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, and with that, I'd like to welcome everybody to another edition of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Heart of a Hall of Famer program, connected by Extreme Network. Today, we are looking out the windows here, very sunny, Florida, which is somebody who lives in the Northeast, spent a lot of time in Chicago.
Yep.
Coming down here is not a bad break from those harsh weathers up north. We are so excited to have you here today at Dr. Joaquin Garcia High School here in Lake Worth, Florida. And our program today is featuring none other than this gentleman sitting right here beside me, Mr. Jimbo Covert. My name is Jake Ray. I'm the Youth Education and Leadership Manager at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I'm going to be moderating our session today. At the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it's our mission to honor the greatest of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence together. And those values we promote are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and honesty, all of which made our Hall of Famers great football players. But those values made this man sitting beside me a great individual off the field as well. And we're going to learn throughout the day today how important those values are. So I'm excited to hear how these values impacted Mr. Covert's life, both on and off the field, as well as for all of our questions that we're going to get to today. Before we do get started, though, some thank yous I'd like to pass out. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our great partners at Extreme Networks for everything they do for us at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and truly for everything they do for schools all over the country. Without their support of this program here today, we wouldn't be sitting here. We wouldn't be at this awesome school. So thank you, Extreme Networks, so much for the support. I also like to thank our teachers and administrators and educators that allowed us to be a small part of their students' learning experience. Not only for all the schools we have connected in today on Zoom or watching us live on YouTube, but a huge thank you to the staff, Coach Walker and Miss Romero, the athletic director here at Garcia, for allowing us to walk in their doors and host the program here today. And then lastly, we have to thank the students. Students, without you, this is just me sitting up here talking to a Hall of Famer. I've got a bunch of questions I can ask, but that's not why I'm here today. Students are going to get the chance to ask questions all throughout the program today. And I said before we got started off camera, especially to our students here, take advantage of this. There's not every day you get the chance to interact with a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. No matter where you're watching us today, whether you're watching us live on YouTube, you're connected in through Zoom, or you're right here in the media center here at Garcia High, we want to make sure you share programs. Obviously, we ask you to keep your phones away during the program. But if after the program, or if you're a teacher in the back of the classroom watching and you're going to be sharing a post today, make sure you tag at Pro Football HOF or at Extreme Networks and use the hashtag HOF values, and your post just might be reshared. So that's enough of me talking here. Not the reason you came to listen today. I would like to formally introduce our special guest today, Hall of Famer, Mr. Jimbo Covert.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, anything you want to start with?
Yeah. I'm so thrilled to be here, spend some time with you guys. Really appreciate you having me. Thank you, Coach, for hosting us here. This is a great event. I got a chance to look at some of the other Hall of Fame speeches that some of the guys have done, and they're incredible. And you think about some of the life stories and some of the things that guys have gone through to get to where they have in playing football or in life. It's a lot of hard work. It's just, not something that is given to you. It's something you got to earn. And, we got a beautiful school here. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and right outside of Pittsburgh in Beaver County. My dad was a steel worker. My grandfather was a steel worker. My great grandfather was a steel worker. My brother, my uncles, every member of my family, male member of my family. So that's where I thought I was going to end up too, because that's kind of what happened back in Pennsylvania. It was kind of you kind of did what your father did. And but I love football, and I wanted to hopefully see if I could play at the collegiate level. But there wasn't really any examples or role models out there that I could look at that I grew up with, obviously, that did that. But, a little bit, when I got a little bit older, there was a guy down the street. His guy's name was J.D. Haglin. And we used to play in the side yard, tackle football, pickup football in the side yard. And he was such a great athlete. And, if I didn't get to get on his team, I would cry. I was like 5 or 6 years younger than him, because I knew if I was on his team, we would always win. And he was such a great athlete, went to the same high school as I did, and really had a really good junior and senior year, and got to go to Clemson on a scholarship. And I said, man, if he could do it, he only lived about 5 houses away from me, then maybe I could do it, and so I had a little bit of a role model and someone that came from the same neighborhood, the same kind of family, steel workers, that had an opportunity to do that. But I think the distinguishing thing about that was, my dad took me into the mill one time in July, when it was in a hot mill, when it was like 110 degrees in there, probably 100 degrees outside and probably 130 degrees inside. And I just saw that hot steel coming down there and sweating. And my dad said to me, son, you never want to come in here, ever. And so that really motivated me. And when I saw what JD was able to do, I said, maybe I can do that. So I was very fortunate that I had a big growing spurt. And I when I was a sophomore in high school, I was about the same size I am now, weighed about 225, right? So it came on really quickly, and I was lucky, and I could run and do all those things. And I was lucky enough to go to the University of Pittsburgh. So I had a college roommate named Dan Marino. We were best pals, still are, and we had a great football team. We had Ricky Jackson, Hugh Green, Tony Dorsett was there before I got there. The 5 guys I started with on the offensive line at Pitt all started as rookies in the NFL. Pretty impressive, right? Russ Grimm was our center. He's a Hall of Famer. Bill Fralick, Mark May. So I was very, very fortunate. But, you're going to see some words that come up here before we get started. We talk about commitment, integrity, honesty, humility, all those things. I think they're really important. And coach probably talks to you about those as well, right? How you treat your teammates, respect, all that stuff, right? But they're just words. They really are just words. I think what makes a big difference in life is that's a foundation, but it's the decisions you make. The decisions you make in life are what really counts. Because every decision you make in life, there's a consequence, right? There's a positive consequence or a negative consequence, but there's always a consequence, right? And when you see sometimes there's a crossroads, right? And you could take the right one or the left one, right? I always tell this to my kids all the time, the left one always everybody takes, right? Because it's the easy way. You know why no one takes the right side? Because it's too damn hard, right? And you know what the right side is? That's where success comes. Because that's where you got to do the hard work, right? The sacrificing. You talk about all the integrity and humility and all the things that we talked about. Respect, that comes from the right side of the road, right? Not the left side. So you guys are going to have decisions throughout your whole life that you're going to see and be confronted with. Just think about it, right? Think about what the right way to do things are, right? Ask your parents, ask your coaches, get advice. But that's where it comes from, because all those other words are just a foundation. So that's kind of the way I looked at it. Because if I had go look back in my life, there's things I would have done differently. Absolutely, everybody would. But I tried to always do the right thing, and I think it ended up okay. So that'd be my message today.
I would say it ended up pretty well.
Yeah.
Seems like sounds like great college roommate. Both ended up in the Hall of Fame. You talked about all those things, and it's so cool because that story, while to probably everybody here seems like a once in a lifetime, but to a lot of our Hall of Famers, you hear those same type of stories. And, you talk a lot about the values of the game. And like you said, your coaches, your parents, your teachers stress it so much. But sometimes when you hear it from somebody you don't hear from a lot, it kind of hits home a little bit more. And I want to focus on those values and the game of football specifically. Can you give us an example of where you learned something from the game of football and then were able to take that same message and apply it to life off the field? Just to give an example of, yes, you can learn all these things from football, but there is a real life application to your life outside of the game.
No, it's a great question. I think the one thing about football that's so great that I don't think people don't realize until you really look at it. One good thing about football is it doesn't matter where you came from, right? Doesn't matter what color you are. Doesn't matter how much money your dad makes. Doesn't matter any of that, right? It matters what you do on the field and what kind of teammate you are. That's what matters, right? That's the great thing about football. You just wish life was that easy all the time, right? And it's not. But what I found is I tried to do that when I got in, when I retired and I got into the business world, that I tried to treat everybody with what they came to the table with, what they produced, and what they were about, not about where they came from, what their education was, what their Ivy League credentials were. That didn't really matter to me. What really mattered to me is how much they produced and what kind of teammate you were, right? Because I kind of look at it like this. That's where leaders are born, right? Before you can be a good leader, right? You got to be a good teammate, right? And before can be a good teammate, you got to be a good person, right? Because character matters. It matters. And so that's what I've always tried to say. Good teammates can become good leaders. And so that's kind of the philosophy I try to live by.
And I think that's a great philosophy to make you a great football player, but it makes you a great teammate of a group in school, your family, and there's your church group, whatever it might be. You're taking those lessons you learn on the field and applying them to your everyday life. So I've got a bunch of other questions, and we could sit here for a very long time, but we want to hear from the students. So we're actually going to start with the students right here in front of us at Garcia High for a question. If you got a question, raise your hand. Don't be shy. All right, go ahead. State your name, your grade, and then go ahead and ask your question. So the question was, what details
Go ahead.
require you to have good character? What are some of those details that make a person full of character?
That's great. That's a great question. I think when you look at character, honesty, integrity, humility, anybody ever see films of Walter Payton, who's my teammate? Anybody ever watch him? He's the greatest football player to ever live. Maybe you guys should go on YouTube and check it out one time. You know what he used to do when he got into the end zone? He'd throw the ball to the official. You know why he did that? He said, I wanted to make sure people understand it wasn't that special because I've been there before. Right. And that was humility. And you're talking about the greatest football player that ever played that could, that when he talked to you like you were the most important person in the world to him at that point. And that's a gift. That's a gift. And so he had humility, and he had the ability to talk to people. I'm not saying he didn't have an ego, believe me. I played with the guy. I know that when you go the all-time leading rushing leader, you do. But he was able to harness that and was able to, come out the other side and make people feel good. Like when I got in there as a rookie, like he would talk to a first-round draft pick and a guy off the street on free agent. Same person. That's special. So I think those are some of the things you're talking about.
Awesome. Thanks for that question. As part of the program today, also, we have students connected in from all over the country. We got some Chicago schools, going back to your time with the Bears.
Awesome.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to some of those schools for the question. We'll get back to you, I promise. For our next part of the question, so we're going to go ahead and go to Owens Scholastic. This is a school up in Chicago for our next question. So if folks there at Owens, go ahead and unmute your microphone, have your students step up, and then go ahead with your question.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Marshawn Dixon, and my question for you is, what was the worst and best parts of being inside of the NFL?
Worst and best parts of being in the NFL. How long do we got?
Best part is, now you gotta remember now, because I played a long time ago, so we didn't make the kind of money these guys make today. So I couldn't say that was the best part, even though it was more the money than most people make. I think the best part was your teammates and the relationships that you build over those years. And I was really lucky. I had great teammates. I was really close with a lot of the guys on the offensive line, really close with Matt Suey, who's a running back, really close with Walter Payton, really close with Jim McMahon, a bunch of guys that I really respected. And I think that's the best part. The worst part, I think, is it's hard to say there's a worst part because it's like the best job in the world, Probably the worst part is just when you got to deal with some injuries and, you get nicked and you got to keep trying to play. And those are some of the hard parts, because it's a physically demanding job, not as much as it is today than it wasn't before. I'm not saying there's not tough guys in the NFL. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of tough guys and there's a lot of hard hitting, It's just, I think before, kind of the way we did things with practice and everything like that was a lot more physical than it is today. And rightly so. I mean, if you had a first round pick and he's your guy and he gets hurt in a preseason game, the coach isn't going to get, he's not going to get, people are going to criticize that. I had to play every preseason game, right? Now they don't even play any preseason games. So it's a little bit different.
Awesome. I think that's a great look into the NFL. Everyone sees it on the surface, glitz and glamour, big paychecks, on all these commercials.
Well, offensive linemen don't give them commercials.
Yeah, it's very true. But it is hard work. You guys, obviously anybody that is an athlete knows what it takes to be a student athlete in high school and college. And, it's a full-time job. A lot of people say their full-time job's 9 to 5, sitting at a desk. If you're a football player, your full-time job, you have to show up every day, willing to work just like your teachers do or anybody else that you meet out in the job force. So
I'd say one more thing that's a great point. But one more thing I'd say about that is, and I think about it all the time, if I had to do one thing over in my career, one thing that if I could change it, I would do is, as hard as I thought I worked, I wish I would have worked harder. I just wish I would have done more. And I thought I did a lot, but there's always something left inside there that you can, put forth the effort. If I had to do it over again, I wish I would have just stayed maybe another 10 minutes after practice, which I used to stay after practice and do pass sets all the time. Maybe another 10 minutes, maybe a little harder in the weight room, maybe a little bit harder in the classroom, studying plays. That's a regret that I have. And so when you're thinking about how hard you got to work to get to where you got to get to, there's always something left inside where you could do a little more.
Awesome. Well, part of what our mission that we talked about here at the beginning is honoring the greatest of the game. But in Canton, Ohio, at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we are a museum. So we preserve the history of the game of professional football from way back in the 1800s all the way up to the stars of today. So anytime we do a program like this, we want to highlight what we do at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And we thought, what better way to do that than to show kind of our most famous gallery in Canton, Ohio. And that's our Hall of Fame gallery, where you're going to see something very familiar to you here in a quick second. So we've got Jack Pruser, who's the Youth Education Leadership Coordinator at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, out live in our museum right now. So we'll throw things to Jack in our most special room, and he's going to talk a little bit about, I believe, what it means to be a Hall of Famer. So Jack, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Jake, and thank you, Jimbo, for tuning into the program here. I'm sure you recognize this guy right next to me here. For students who don't know, this is Jimbo Covert's bronze bust. Every Hall of Famer gets one of these when they're inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Currently, there are 382 total Hall of Famers that each have a bronze bust. As you can imagine, over 300 million people that have played the game of football, 5 million that went on to go to college. And then from there, about 29,000 go on to play professionally. And there's only 382 of these. So he is an elite company. Jimbo Covert being one of the greatest tackles in the game of football. My question kind of ties into that is, you watch the game today, right? How important the offensive line play is. You see these quarterbacks struggling because their linemen are struggling, or, the different protections and aspect that way. Can you talk about the importance of, when you were playing, the importance of the offensive line and how vital it is to an NFL offense?
No, great question. I had a coach a long time ago in college who was a offensive coordinator, and his name was Wally English at Pitt. He was Danny's coach at Pitt, and he said to me one time, he goes, "What's the most important part of a passing offense?" And I thought it was some kind of trick question or something, and I didn't say anything. And before I could say anything, he said, "Pass protection." He said, "Doesn't matter what kind of quarterback you have, doesn't matter what kind of receivers you have. If you don't protect the passer, you're not going to be able to get the ball off. And you're not going to have a scheme that's going to allow you to do things. There's pass protection." And so a lot of people don't realize that. Watch a football game, right? Just watch the offensive line. Just watch them. And just watch when mistakes are made and people miss blocks and guys get beat, bad things happen. right? Bad things happen. And so it's so important to a football team. You know, everybody talks about how great our defense was in 1985, and they were a great defense. I think there was 6 or 7 Pro Bowlers there. You know, but we led the league in rushing, led the league in time possession. We were second in the league in scoring, led the league in first downs. It makes your defense pretty good when they're not on the field. And so, you know, people don't realize that. They want to talk about other things, but that's football.
Yeah, thank you, Jimbo. And I think you mentioned, you know, before you started offensive linemen not getting commercials. I think that should change. They do a lot of the dirty work that goes unrecognized. And you mentioned that when you see people watch them make a mistake, they're automatically, oh, it's the offensive line's fault. When in reality, they're doing a lot more to help the offense than people think. Thank you. With that, Jake, I'll send it back to you and the students.
Thanks, Jack. Always cool when we get to look in the Hall of Fame gallery there.
Yeah.
You know, we like to say your second home there in Canton, Ohio, where that bronze bust will live for a very, very long time as guests come through and get to see that Jimbo Covert is a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So with that being said, we're going to go back to one of our other schools we've got connecting here. So we're going to go to the North Ridgeville Academic Center back in Northeast Ohio for a question from them. So students, whenever you're ready at North Ridgeville, go ahead and step up to the microphone, state your name, the grade that you're in, and then go ahead and ask your question.
I'm Ashlyn and I'm in 6th grade. My question for you is, throughout your career, can you tell me some of the challenges you face as a professional athlete?
So challenges you face as a professional athlete throughout your career.
Probably when you had to block someone like Lawrence Taylor, that was probably one of the challenges you had to do. No, I think some of the challenges are when you get there as a rookie, trying to establish yourself. You know, I came from a place at Pitt where, you know, our offensive line was kind of like we were the ones that kind of established practice tempo, you know, like tempo. When I got to the Bears, you know, our defense was doing that. They were throwing guys around like ping pong balls, you know. So I said, that's not going to happen to me. Like, if you want to do that on the other side, you can do it, but you're not going to do that to me. And as you got to establish yourself as a tough guy, and that you're gonna earn the respect of your teammates, and that's important. So I think that's kind of the challenges as you get in, and then once you establish that, then you get the respect from your teammates, and that's important.
Awesome. Well, we got another school we want to get to here before we wrap up today. Walker Elementary is going to be our next school. So our students there at Walker Elementary, go ahead and have your students step up to the microphone, state their name, their grade, and then go ahead with their question.
I'm Charlie. I'm in 5th grade. My question for you is, football is many times referred as the ultimate team sport. How do you think teamwork teaches you about life?
Wow, that's a great question. No, I think I talked a little bit about earlier. You know, teamwork is so important even when you get into the business world, right? Even to when you get into having a job, you're part of a team. Everybody's job is important, regardless if you're in a big company, small company, a football team. Everybody's job is important. You know, people have roles that they play, and your role is important. Even though someone say, well, I got a secondary role, or I got, no, you're important. You're part of the machine. You're part of how it works. So I think teamwork is so important. You know, I talked about a little bit before. There's a lot of guys that I'm played with over the years from high school to college that were great athletes. Great. But they weren't necessarily good teammates. That's a big thing you got to remember. They weren't necessarily good teammates. And so when you're not a good teammate and you're selfish, I'm going to go get mine, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, it just doesn't work. Because when you're part of the team, you know, you have a role, and that role is what you're the design of the offense and what you're trying to do. So no, I think that's really important, teamwork. And I think you see it in every aspect of life right now. And in this school, you got teamwork the same way, right? From the administration all the way down. So everybody has a role.
Awesome. We saw the bronze bust. That's one of the 3 iconic symbols that you get when you're enshrined to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Believe it or not, the other 2 are sitting right here in this chair. So you get 3 iconic symbols. You get the bronze bust, you get the Hager gold jacket, which you have on there, and you get the K Jewelers Ring of Excellence, which you have as well. When you receive both these, it's kind of different than your bronze bust. Your bronze bust, you get to unveil it, and then you get to give your speech. That's that event. Your jacket, you get Friday night before you get enshrined, kind of the first time you get to put it on. The ring, you get to do it in front of your fans, the team at your stadium. So those are all 3 kind of different events. But at the end of the day, you're still getting that recognition. What was it like for you to throw that jacket on over your shoulders or hold that ring up at Soldier Field in front of all those Bears fans?
I think what really was special was both of those where Matsui, who was my roommate on the road, and the only Penn State person I've ever really liked in my life, that he put it on, and that was really special for me. And then he was at the ring ceremony as well, and was there to present me with that along with a couple of folks in the Hall of Fame. So, when your teammates are involved and you're able to get recognized with them, I think that's the most special part about it.
Awesome. Well, we do have a question from YouTube. We got some schools also watching our live stream on there. So this is from Taylor Elementary in Chicago. They want to know how important was having a role model in your life, and after achieving all the success that you did, having the opportunity to then be a role model for somebody else.
No, we have some really good questions. I was lucky because I had 2 great parents. And I always say, I know it's cliche, but I would say I never really had far to look for role models because they were right down the hall. My mom and dad were, exceptional people. My dad, worked at Armco Steel, shift work for 34 years. And then 1 week a month when he was on night turn, he would come home in the morning, shower, and then go work on a Sears and Roebuck moving truck for another 8 hours. Did that once a month for, once a week a month. And hard work. I mean, he never didn't sleep, basically for, a week. And so I saw that and I said, man, that's tough. And then my mom worked at J.C. Penney's, and, we every stitch of clothing we owned was from J.C. Penney's, And so it was but I saw how hard they worked, so that was kind of my first role models. And then, as I mentioned, J.D. Haglund, who was I think the greatest football player in my high school history. And then when I got to the Bears, those guys like Walter Payton, but when I saw what those guys did, they're real pros. What I mean by a real pro shows up every day, works hard through the injuries. That's a football player. That's a pro football player, and that's a good role model. And so those are some of the people that I looked up to.
We mentioned a little bit 1983. You mentioned it there in your speech. Drafted 6 overall by the Bears in 1983. We always think this is a fun question. You're welcome to the NFL moment. What was that moment as a rookie in practice, maybe running out for your first game, where you kind of had to take a step back and go, all right, this is a little bit different than Pitt. I'm in the NFL now.
Yeah. I think my second game, we played against Tampa Bay, and they had a defensive lineman named Leroy Selman, who you guys are too young to know, but Leroy was the Oklahoma guy. If you talk to tackles that played in the 80s, he'll tell you he's probably the best guy they ever played against. Best guy I ever played against by far. I was young, but and so we ran a play right over me, and so I go, I'm gonna come off the ball. I'm gonna show this guy where I'm from. I'm really gonna come off the ball. And I came off, and he olayed me and made a tackle. So I go, okay, all right. So and so then now it's third quarter. We call the same play again. I go, well, nah, I can't come off too hard, because I came off too hard. He olayed me where he jacked me up right underneath the chin, right? And I go, okay, now I got it. Now I got it. You got to be prepared for anything. It wasn't like college. And then we went down there, played them. the next year in '84, and I graded out 95%. So I was like, I figured it out because he was the best guy I ever played against. Even though I had a good game that game, he was hard to handle. So
Pretty cool too when it's always against a fellow Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I know we got another question in here. So we'll take some more questions from our student here at Garcia before we wrap up. So do you have a question? Go ahead.
How important do you feel accountability is on the field?
Wow. That's a great question too. Everybody's accountable. Eventually, either your teammates hold you accountable, which they should. We kind of did, like you police yourself, like teammates police themselves. Just kind of like, hey, like if you respect somebody, right, you go up to them and say, hey, what you're doing isn't going to work. Like we need everybody on the same page. We need everybody, pulling the rope in the same direction, right? And when you get a couple guys that go the other way, that teamwork doesn't work that way. Team harmony doesn't work that way. Culture on a team, right? Senior leadership on a team, right? And then you got culture goes the other way. So, no, I think accountability is really important. I think your coaches hold you accountable. You see that in the film room. My line coach at Pitt, Joe Moore, they got an award named after him, the Joe Moore Award. It's the best offensive line in college football. He was tough. He'd run that film back like this, like when you made a mistake, right? Back and forth and back and forth in front of your teammates to show you were accountable to them, right? So, no, I think that's a great question. Everybody's accountable in some way, shape, or form.
I got another question from our audience here at Garcia. Go ahead and just raise your hand. Go ahead.
Mental challenge. I wasn't the greatest student in the world. I admit it. I really didn't work that hard in high school. And kind of like back then, it was kind of like the smart guys were kind of nerds, that kind of stuff, which is completely opposite of the way it should be. The smart guys got all the jobs now, right? The smart guys got all the girls now. Back then, it wasn't like that. So I kind of fell into that stupid mentality. And then when I got to Pitt, it was a challenge for me because I didn't work that hard in college or in high school. So I had to work like doubly hard when I got to Pitt because it wasn't like high school. So I wish I would have just worked harder in high school academically because then I would have been way better in a position when I went to school at Pitt. I graduated from Pitt. That was a challenge too at the beginning, but I did, and that's it's because of I had to kind of start over again, and I wish I would have had a better foundation in high school.
All right, another question from our audience here at Garcia. Go ahead, right here in the middle. Getting the mic turned on. There we go.
Christian Howard, he said, what helped you surpass the mental blockage during the game? Like when you were like a little bit of slump that helped you be successful.
Oh,
those mental blocks during the game. You get Olayed, you get beat the next play. What did you do to recover from that to bring yourself back up?
Yeah. No, I just think you focus back on what you're taught. And, playing offensive line or playing any position, but especially offensive line, it's all about repetition, 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 right? Good footwork, good hand placement. Playing off, how many offensive linemen we got in here? So playing offensive line is not, it's not rocket science, okay? There's like three things, right? But the three things you got to do 10,000 times, right? And that's the deal. So I always tell people, you got to have your feet underneath you when you play offensive line, right? Any sport that you play, right? You can't hit a golf ball, you can't play basketball, you can't hit a baseball, right? unless your feet's underneath you, right? What I mean by that is you can't get overextended, right? You got to get leverage, right? And so if that guy's helmet's here, your helmet's got to be here. You got to get underneath them to move them. And the last thing is you got to stay square. You got to fight to stay square. Now, if a guy kind of beats you and, on a pass rush, you can run after him, throw him, push him past the quarterback. That's going to happen every once in a while. He gets a snap count on you, but you got to fight to stay square all the time, right? You see offense. What do you see when you watch offensive line play in the NFL? A lot of times they get in, they don't stay square. They get that club back inside right into the quarterback, right? But if he's square, he's not going to get club back inside, right? It's a hard thing to do because it's unnatural. It's unnatural. So those are some of the things. So you think back how you're taught. And when you make a mistake, you think back how you're taught and you stay with the fundamentals.
Awesome. Great question. Before we wrap up here, I got a few more questions I want to touch on. And I want to touch on the Super Bowl. We talked to a lot of Hall of Famers who weren't lucky enough to win the Super Bowl. And, but they achieved the highest level at the end of the highest achievement at the individual level, making it to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But a lot of them talk about how important a Super Bowl would have been in your case. Can you tell a little bit about winning the Super Bowl and how important that was for you at the team level versus, being enshrined to the Pro Football Hall of Fame at, the individual success that's looked at there?
Yeah, well, I think for us, we got beat in the 84 NFC Championship game by the 49ers, Joe Montana and the 49ers. They beat us up pretty good. Jim McMahon was hurt, and we weren't really good offensively as well as we should have been. And they beat us pretty good. And then they were kind of a couple guys on the other side, 49er players were saying, bring an offense next time. Whoop.
We're at a school.
Oh, that's all right.
Bell rings sometimes.
So the 49er guys were like, bring an offense next time, and we go on the plane on the way home and we were talking about going to the Super Bowl next year. We were talking about what it would take for us to go to the Super Bowl next year. And then the team came together, put away all kinds of selfish things about who's going to make the Pro Bowl, who's going to make all pro, who's going to do this, who's going to get, and we focused. And the next year, we ran the table, and we're able to do it. So that's what I think a team comes together, and that's what they do. When they get a challenge, they get disappointed, and then they come back and say, okay, what do we have to do now to be better? Make that decision, a commitment, and then do it.
Before I ask my last question, again, I want to thank you so much for giving up a lot of your time to be here today, speak to not only the students here at Garcia High School, but to all the students we had connected in. And then anyone who watches this program, down the road. The nice thing is this is live on YouTube, so it's already posted there for people to go find down the road as well if you ever want to listen to it, to hear Mr. Covert's comment again. But my final question, and it's a question we wrap up every program with, because I think it's a great way to send everybody out with that one key piece of advice. So let's say students forget everything you say, but there's one thing that they remember. What's that one last piece of advice, that one key item you want people to take away today?
No, I would say that success is in every one of you. It's in there. You just got to figure out how to way to unlock it, right? It's there. I've met people from all walks of life and business that came from all kinds of different places. And they're successful because it's in there. You just got to figure out a way to make it work for you. And like I talked about decisions, when you make decisions like that, think about how it's going to impact you, what it's going to impact you, athletically, academically, your life. Those things are important. So, it sounds easy sometimes, but, a lot of times there are decisions you make that, you flippantly go through it and don't think about what the consequences or ramifications are. So that's what I would focus on.
All right. With that, we're going to wrap up this installment of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Heart of a Hall of Famer series, connected by Extreme Networks, featuring class of 2020 member Mr. Jimbo Covert. Let's give him a round of applause for being here talking to everybody today. Mr. Covert, thank you so much again for being a part of the program. Thank you for everything you did for the game of football and everything you'll continually get to do for us at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So with that, we thank everybody for tuning in today, and we hope we can tune into another one. We'll see you guys later.